Greetings, Theories of Abstraction students. Happy Monday. Welcome to week 7. This is the last week of content we'll have. Next week, you'll be writing your term papers and finishing up any loose ends. First of all, let me apologize. I still haven't gotten back on track in responding to your two writings last week. It's been a difficult week, and I will promise to be back on track this week. I'll start with responding to the discussion prompt responses that you turned in on Kandinsky and Russian constructivism and the icon first today, and then I'll make my way back in time. So I'm sorry about that, but I'll get my responses to you in the next few days. So this week we're going to be focusing on two aspects that I would like you to consider. One is the work of Mondrian and the Dutch avant-garde movement De Stijl in the context of our exploration of abstraction. And the second is the role of Alfred Barr and the Museum of Modern Art in providing a particular kind of genealogy and a particular taxonomy of modern art that emphasizes, that contextualizes abstraction as a development, as an almost natural evolutionary development in the history of modern art, as well as de-emphasizing its political and social impact, or the implications of abstraction as a political gesture and as an embedded social practice that is critiquing institutions and political and economic structures, and exploring why the Museum of Modern Art, uniquely situated in New York, provides the opportunity to be able to, on one hand, preserve works of art and artists that produce them, given the explosion of totalitarianism, the threat of Hitler and the Nazis to not only the existence of works of art, but of also the artists themselves. And as artists were fleeing, New York becomes a safe haven, not only for the artists, it becomes a safe haven through the work and efforts, the heroic efforts of Alfred Barr to the development of a particular way of understanding the history of modern art that is, in many ways, distinctively American, and it bound up in a particular way of emphasizing artistic practice. But first, with Mondrian. Mondrian is part of a Dutch avant-garde group called De Stijl, which is Dutch for the style. It is a way, like the Russian constructivists, it's using the abstract, the non-objective principles of line, form, and color, the rejection of subject matter, of figurative, metaphoric subject matter, the stripping of art to these essentials, something that we saw with Malevich. And so you have then the characteristic Mondrian paintings of the right angles, the black lines, the primary colors, and Mondrian articulates in numerous writings how he understands, in manifestos and statements, how he understands his work, and I've included examples of that for you. But what I want to stress with Mondrian's paintings is the context within which they emerge and within which they are intended to participate. That is, the socially, culturally integrative understanding of the avant-garde and the role that paintings play in this modern life. Paintings are not the Sunday pastime activity of the bourgeoisie in exhibitions in museums and galleries. Think about the annual Paris Salons, the examples, the indicators, the signals, the cultural signals of wealth and taste and prestige. But that paintings were participating in the reformulation and the revolution of social, political, and cultural life. That is, they aren't emblems of wealth and patronage, power. They are instruments of change. And they are intended not for the elite, but for the masses. A broad-based revolution of aesthetic sensibility, of taste, of vision, of beauty. That is not simply the province of wealth and power. Moreover, these paintings, the context within which these paintings are intended to be experienced, is a holistic aesthetic context, a context that consists, these are paintings hung in living areas designed by de Stijl avant-garde designers, along with furniture, place settings, utensils, produced by de Stijl inspired designers, in homes built by de Stijl inspired architects. And de Stijl is a comprehensive avant-garde within which painters played a role, designers played a role, architects played a role. And so these de Stijl inspired homes built by architects were placed within neighborhoods designed by de Stijl inspired urban planners. So the integrative component of a community has its base not in industrialism and utility and all the bottom line of efficiency, of cost and time efficiency, but in the aesthetic. It is art that is shaping this. That's one of the intended goals of the German avant-garde movement in the Bauhaus, the new Academy of Modern Art that brought the best artists from around Europe, and particularly Central Europe, to Germany in Weimar and then Dessau in the 20s and 30s to teach painting, sculpture, ceramics, design, typography, architecture, part of this international style. And so it's important to see these paintings. We may see a Mondrian painting in a museum with other paintings that were made at around that time or a part of the story of the development and the evolution of modernism and abstraction. But we have to keep in mind that those paintings are relics that are artifacts taken from a social context. And the context is, if we consider Mondrian's writings and the intentions and the activities of the other artists and designers that he was working with, there is a more integral context within which these paintings were intended to function. Now, it is precisely this social and integrative context that is de-emphasized in the Museum of Modern Art. And in terms of the work that Barr does in terms of collecting, categorizing, and then beginning to narrate the story of the history of modern art, Barr is deeply influential. But Barr's accent, the inflection of his stories as they get worked out in his exhibitions, is a formalist one, is a one that focuses on a particular kind of evolution and development that de-emphasizes the social, the political. And that's something that that the Marxist art historian Meyer Shapiro emphasizes in his critique of Alfred Barr's very influential exhibition, Cubism and Abstract Art, which was on view in 1936, and is crucial for our understanding of the development and the taxonomy of abstraction. And what I'll do is, I have a PDF of the entire exhibition catalog that I will send to you under a separate email after this email, because it's just too big of a file. So you can have the entire document the archive that you can move through and look at. And I would suggest that you do searches in the Museum of Modern Art. MoMA website has a tremendous archive. And this is where you can find these archival PDFs of the catalogs. You have installation photographs of the exhibitions. And think about 1936. You have Hitler, and you have the rise of National Socialism. You have the threat. You have degenerate art exhibition. Hitler is confiscating works of modern art. The artists are the artists with the artists are under threat, either as Jewish or as some other Polish, etc. That Hitler demarcates as unclean and a corruption of the Aryan nature. So they're fleeing, and Alfred Barr is buying works of art, bringing them to the museum, requesting loans from various institutions to have them sent to New York with no intention of sending them back, knowing that they are going to be confiscated by the Nazis. Alfred Barr is a hero in this context. There are certain things that the work that he does gives a certain bias, and we have to understand that. But the Museum of Modern Art is a tremendous testimony to humanism, to the integrity of humanity. Now, there is an aspect that Barr emphasizes, a social, say, political aspect that Barr emphasizes, but it doesn't have anything to do with materialism. It doesn't have anything to do with Marxism, with the market, with economic or explicit political structures. What it has to do with is this abstract idea of freedom, of the individual, human freedom. And this is important because this is going to be something that is going to serve an important function as a slogan for the American government in the 1950s during the Cold War. It is American democracy that preserves individual existential freedom. So existential philosophy, Kierkegaard, Sartre, become honorary Americans, emphasizing individual freedom. And this individual freedom is exemplified in human creative activity. And there is something quite valid in that. The integrity of human action, the integrity of human freedom is exemplified in the arts. And that human freedom and creativity is a threat to totalitarian governments. It was a threat to Hitler, it was a threat to Stalin. And yet, it also became the means by which we begin to develop a certain kind of globalized, neoliberal, individual consumer mentality that is deeply problematic and with which entangles our global market neoliberal world that we live in. So I hope these comments are helpful to you. Again, emphasizing the sense that abstraction is not just simply a willy-nilly exercise of human creativity, but that it's a response to social, political, and ethical challenges. That it's intended to continue the practice of painting in other means, in ways that are responsive to the moment, that are responsive to a belief in a future. That it's historically minded, even if that historically mindedness is an attempt to scrape all of that away. You still have that effort of scraping away to get down to that basic fundamentals of line, form, and color, or to that painting ground zero, as Malevich would call it, to begin again. And it's not insignificant that Mondrian and Malevich can sustain non-objective abstraction for only a few years. Both of them return to a figurative component. Malevich explicitly, Mondrian begins to work within his abstract language to bring in more narrative focused or narrative inflected implications in his work. And I think that in itself is quite significant. But what you see is you have painting responding to the developments of responding to and catalyzing developments in development, social, political, and economic and cultural in the cultural situation, and deeply embedded in something that is very much a part of the history of modernism in general, say from the 19th century, is perception. What does it mean to see? The revolution of seeing. What are we looking at? And what are we looking at? And how do we perceive what we're looking at? And how do we interpret it and understand it? And is seeing and is what we see what is most important in life? And perhaps this aspect of abstraction in general is a way for us to push against and to resist the temptation to see or to simply focus on what is before us, that the world, that our life is more than just what we see at hand. And that what we have is not just today at this moment, but we also have tomorrow. And what is that hope that we have for something that is unseen? The imagination of what it could be. What could an economic structure, what could a social structure, what could my life be tomorrow? And the potential then of it to be otherwise. So I hope these thoughts are helpful to you. Have a great week, and you'll be hearing from me very soon and often. And I've had a tremendous time with you. I have learned a lot, and I hope Hope this class has been helpful to you, that it serves as that it can serve in some ways as a plumb line as you're working through your graduate program, that this question of abstraction, which is a very difficult one to account for, and to account for it in ways that's different than just simply saying that it's a reduction of the importance or a loss of skill on the part of the painters, which forces us to question what is at heart, what is painting, what are the visual arts at heart. And certainly Renaissance painting, classical painting tells us something about painting, but it doesn't tell us everything about painting. The development of modern art tells us something about painting as well, and abstraction also. So what is it that you can take from this class, from these readings, from your thinking about abstraction, and how can you apply it constructively as a way to be additive to your own studies in whatever direction you're moving? All right, have a great week. You'll see me again on Friday.